There was a small village about an hour's drive outside of Haditha. It had probably 20 homes and buildings in it. We went there to search for an IED maker. We cordoned off the village, and when we cleared it out, we found our guy under a stack of like 10 of those floor mats they would all lay on. For those of you not in the know, imagine a super shitty mattress. They would spread them all out on the floor at night, sleep, and stack them during the day. Anyway, he was hiding under them. We pulled him out of the house, and he wasn't too excited. As we were kind of wrestling him into the 7-ton, what we all believed was his mother went insane, like possessed. She was screaming and flinging dirt on her face and ripping her clothes. She pointed at each of us, and I swear to God, she put a curse on us. Of my buddies there, every single one of us still has insane nightmares with this Iraqi lady in it. The dreams are extremely real, and each of us wakes up in cold sweats and feels paralyzed. This was over 15 years ago, and I have yet to explore this one with my VA shrink, Brad. You are now entering the realm of the freaky deaky, an unsuspecting stop at the crossroads of fantasy and reality, where the frayed edges of make-believe seep into this cookie-cutter white picket world you've been led to believe is far from extraordinary. What you're about to hear are true stories.
Alleged true stories.
Christian, just... okay? Tales of the strange and inexplicable thought only to exist in film and folklore. Although difficult to accept, we do not know everything about this reality. About time or space, what lies beneath the ocean's depths. And try though we might, the unchanging truth remains. There are some things we legitimately cannot explain logically.
Also, Scott is always right.
Well, thank you, Christian. What a great way to start this episode, folks. Welcome back to the Freaky.
That is something I never said.
Christian, everything on this soundboard is something you've said at some point in time. Whether or not it's in context, leave that up to the listeners. But
don't believe it, folks.
It was said at one point in time, and it was even said when this episode started. I didn't push a button or anything like that. We were in the middle of a discussion. We're talking about ghosts, aliens, demons, angels, the whole like, and you're like, you know what? Scott is always right. To that, I say, huzzah!
Mommy, we have never talked about angels.
But we have, and that's fine. Folks, welcome back to the show.
Like the devil.
Okay.
Doesn't exist.
Okay.
Is my boyfriend a demon?
Anyway, if you are a new listener sent over from the hole, welcome, fellow Belieflings. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. We love those guys, and they have been nothing but honestly pretty amazing with us for reasons we still have not understood completely.
It's me, not you.
Well, that's simply not true, but
it's popping.
Either way. We ask one thing and one thing only, and that is that you check out the episode in its entirety. And if you're a fan of what you hear, you subscribe wherever you're listening, you follow the show, you rate it 5 stars, everything that kind of just helps us build this out. Word of mouth is literally our only marketing strategy, and you guys have been amazing, and we appreciate that. So if you're a fan of nonsensical soundboards and dry humor and crazy stuff that is simply unexplainable at times, unless you're Christian and it's just your brain, welcome to the show. You can find us on social media at Freaky Deaky Pod, pretty much across the board, unless you're on TikTok, which I guess is being banned, but honestly, who cares? And or knows. But if for some reason you still want to find us there, it's at TFT Paranormal. We do not post very often over there.
We will, or probably, hopefully, by the time this comes out, we have been.
Probably not, but we'll see. This is a mere 2 weeks away, or 2 weeks down the road from when we're recording. And these are tidbits of information that nobody out there cares about. Cold open story, if you didn't get the gist, and if you are illiterate and don't know how to read, the title of this episode, wow, great start. We're diving into some active duty military, along with haunted bases and all kinds of fun stuff in the next 2 weeks. I started out looking into active duty stories and got some real zingers, but then from there it was just kind of like a rabbit hole down into the haunted bases and all this other fun stuff with the military. And I was like, you know what? I just can't narrow this down to one episode. I'm sorry. And as a matter of fact, it's going to be 3 technically, because we're doing these 2 a few weeks down the road. Probably we're going to be touching on specific locations, but more on that later as we get into the episode. Christian, how are you doing today?
I am superb.
Well, there you have it, folks. He is superb.
Come at me, bro.
I will come at you with another Haditha story, actually. This was one that actually kind of kicked it off, and it's by TX Cryptids. It's called the Haditha Dogman problem. Ooh.
Here we go with Dogman.
Here we do go with Dogman. You're absolutely right. It was during my third deployment to Iraq. Iraq? Did I say that weird? I feel like I said that weird. Is it Iraq? Iraq?
I've heard about
Who gives a shit, right? But like for what I almost feel like I blended both of those. Like I rock.
I think
I rock.
You're looking in, or you're thinking about it too much.
That doesn't sound like me at all. Anyway, it was during my third deployment to Iraq. The platoon had taken up residence in 2 houses in a village several miles south of Haditha. One day I heard our translator having a heated discussion with 2 local men. I grabbed my gear, my rifle, and walked out to the road to investigate. I asked the translator what was going on. He tells me that these 2 men are crazy and assures me that they are not dangerous. I ask what they want, and he mumbles about them being superstitious or something along those lines. He assures me that everything is okay and my attention is not needed. It took a bit of prying, but the translator finally says that they are having a wolfman problem, but they are afraid that if they shoot at it, the local troops will be alarmed and attack their house. They tell us that this wolfman has been coming around late at night and has already killed a few sheep, and they are worried that it's going to start attacking their family. So, I assume somewhere in the translation the word dog has turned into wolf and is somehow being conveyed to me by the translator as wolfman. So I try to clarify, do they mean dog? The translator is a bit hesitant, almost like he's embarrassed that his countrymen are wasting everyone's time by believing in such nonsense, but they are adamant that their house is being besieged by a wolfman. Again, I ask if it's just a big dog, and no, it's a wolfman. So I ask if there are any wolves in Iraq. Yeah, no, I said it differently. I'm just going to say it differently every time. It's fine. And they are still in agreement that yes, there are wolves in Iraq. Wow, did it again. But there are no wolves in this part of the country, and it's not a wolf or a large dog that has been killing their sheep. It's a wolfman. The translator is trying to usher them away, but at this point I am very intrigued and still a bit confused over the whole dog wolfman thing, so I ask them to describe what they are seeing. They tell me that every few nights it comes around. They first see it on 4 legs as it skulks around their small compound, but then it stands up like a man walking on 2 legs. It growls and it has lunged at men, but as they retreat it turns its attention to the sheep. Their own dogs refusing to help protect human or sheep. They tell me the creature has killed a few of their sheep and that they have found one of the bodies ripped apart with portions of it eaten away. They have been hesitant to shoot for fear of troop involvement. The translator says that he has heard of such a creature, and even though this type of story has been spread through the area by various people, it is no more than superstitions and delusions. He assures me that there is no such thing as a wolfman. I tell the 2 men that they should feel free to protect themselves and their livestock, and with my interest piqued, I get the men to agree to allowing us to stop by from time to time and set up an observation post while we are out on patrol. A couple nights later, I join a night patrol and we head toward the house. We are greeted by one of the men and he gives us entry to the compound. We go up to the roof and set out sentries to overlook a nearby bridge. About an hour later, the homeowner comes up with a panicked look on his face. He's talking really fast, excitement and concern in his voice and body language. He's wanting me to come with him. I tell 2 others to come with me and we all follow the man. He leads us to the other side of the house and we exit onto an enclosed courtyard where the sheep are being kept. The sheep are making plenty of noise and the man is pointing to a dark corner of the yard. I strain my eyes to see what he's pointing at. Finally, I see it. A large wolf or dog just standing in the corner. I ask the other 2 guys with me if they see it too, and they both agree that it's a wolf or a dog. It moved behind small sections of the wall, and I could hear popping and cracking noises like joints or knuckles being cracked. When it stepped out from behind the wall, it was upright on 2 legs. It swiftly and effortlessly jumped the perimeter wall, and we could hear it running away on 2 feet. I conveyed to the man as best as I could, if that thing ever showed up again, feel free to shoot it if he could, and if he did, to please let me know. Interesting.
What was the name? Texas Cryptid or something like that?
TX Cryptids, yeah. So that makes sense.
I don't know. I can't get behind Dogman.
What about Wolfman?
I mean, Teen Wolf, yeah. Wow. Michael J. Fox.
Wow.
That's about what I think of Dogman.
So any story that you hear with a wolf-like cryptid, you're just gonna be like, I don't believe it because I don't believe that exists. So therefore, the story saying that it saw something like that doesn't open my eyes a little, but it shuts them completely.
No, it's like if people are seeing something like this, I would say it would be more likely to be a Bigfoot type creature that people are just seeing in the wrong way in low light situations or fearful situations. Dogman doesn't make sense.
Well, a lot of the cryptids in general don't make sense. Like a lot of these stories don't make sense, just, willy-nilly thrown out there to the world.
I think some cryptid stories do make sense because you can see some of these cryptids as being maybe evolved or, a lost creature that we just never realized was there.
Sure.
Like Bigfoot, for example, or even if you go to like Nessie,
gigantic dinosaur, most likely.
Or dinosaur or something like that, that maybe we don't know what it is. But Dogman, I don't know, man, especially in the middle of a war zone, hunting sheep.
I think we had, and I'm trying to remember what episode it was in so I can kind of point to it. But there was that one story of pretty much like someone on watch, and I want to say it was in Iraq too, but it was like this wolfman creature was either like going after this motorcyclist or something like that. Do you remember? Does that ring a bell at all?
Yes.
Because I was like, was it our show or was I listening to a different podcast? But yeah, so this guy is pretty much like watching this entire thing like go down right in front of his eyes. And same situation. It's a gigantic wolf dogman like creature. And look, I'm not saying that I have all the answers, even though
also Scott is always right. Not usually.
I'm not saying I have all the answers, but it is very interesting that there's so many stories of this like particular creature out there. And granted, yes, it did come into existence fairly recently, or at least in like pop culture recently.
Like what's his name? Slender Man.
Yeah, but that one at least has origins tied directly to creepypasta, so it's like you can follow that trail and be like, oh, this was all made up. And granted, there is, I think it's either in this one or part 2, slender entity that is seen. I think it's in a base or something like that, but that seems more like shadow person-y than an actual Slender Man type creature. Yeah, man, I don't know. Look, originally I didn't believe in Dogman. I was like, okay, well, that's clearly just a werewolf, right? But then you get stories as far back as like St. Christopher and all that shit where, portrayed as a dog man. And then there's like the island of like the dog-headed people or whatever that is. I'm sure you remember what it's called. I don't remember who it was. You remember the story though, right? Where like
Yes.
They came across like an island of people that had dog heads. As outlandish as it sounds, it's not impossible for me to believe that these things exist. And that's why, hey, spoiler alert, I do.
No on Dogman. But
you just have to see one. Is that where we're at? Because there's sightings like right down the road from us, man. Like honestly, so we just gotta pick it's gotta be like one of those. We just go out in the woods at the right place, right time, and be like, oh, what is that? A gigantic wolf on 2 legs? Beautiful.
it's impossible. But let me give you a different possibility.
Sure.
I'm going to pretend for a moment that demons exist.
Wow.
But it's just pretend.
Lucky us.
In that region of the world, is where civilization is said to have begun.
Sure.
We've had a lot of various religions. We've had a lot of the top 3 religions. So there's a lot of potential demons or jinn or whatever in that area. We get a dogman that really always, to me, sounds more like a skinwalker than a dogman.
It's kind of got that vibe to it, especially like in this story where it's like the cracking of the bones and stuff like that. It feels like a shapeshifter of some kind.
And theoretically, I mean, if there's a skinwalker in Native American culture, it could have come, along with the migration of people, from early on in civilization and spread out from there and just kind of caught on as myths and legends or demons and a Middle Eastern form of skinwalker. I don't know. But that makes more sense to me than even a dogman in any capacity.
Oh, well, it definitely makes more sense, sure. But so you're saying that every dogman sighting is literally like either a shapeshifter or skinwalker type thing instead of...
Or a Bigfoot.
Yeah, that too. Because, I mean, it is kind of strange that like people never come across like a sleeping dogman or like a sleeping Bigfoot. I mean, I guess there's probably been a couple stories out there, but honestly, who gives a shit? But yeah, it is pretty wild. Sometimes I'll just be sitting there, like I'll be driving or something like that. I'm like, what the hell do Bigfoot do all day? Like, what do they do all day? When they're not being spotted crossing a road or something like that, or do they have like games that they play in the trees, or do they just hang out?
Remember that one story we told about Bigfoot and the guy that got kidnapped by a family of Bigfoot, and he was like
Albert Ostman,
gave gave the dad Bigfoot snuff to make him sick and took off. I mean, maybe that's what they do all day. They capture people and prospectors or trappers out in the middle of nowhere.
Use them as dolls.
Yeah, take them to another dimension. That's why we don't find them sleeping, because they sleep in another dimension with Dogman and Mothman.
Wow. Just the one Mothman. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, man. And we are talking about doing like extra dimensional Bigfoot episode, I guess, like trying to find the weirder Bigfoot stories, because those are some of my favorites. Like those are pretty wild and out there.
Those are the ones that the author Stephen King kind of believes in.
Which is very strange, but it also kind of checks out, you know?
Well, he also has mentioned many times that in the area of the country that he lived in and rode in a lot, which would have been Maine, has portals. Things disappear or appear out of it. I mean, he's put it in his books.
Yeah.
The Dark Tower series even has him as a character experiencing exactly that. So maybe it's something like that. I mean, it's still hard for me to get behind, but Dogman stories are entertaining, but I just feel it's impossible.
Well, you feel that way about a lot of very possible things. So that, if anything, is a good counter indicator on whether or not this thing actually exists. But that is a conversation, I'm sure, for another time. In the meantime, we're going to get in this next one, which is called Okinawa's Lady in Black of Camp Kinser. And Okinawa, actually, before we get into this, is going to be the other episode, the loose part 3. It's not going to technically be attached to these two. It's going to be down the road a little bit. But I found so many haunted stories and locations and experiences out of Okinawa, Japan, that I was like, I honestly am just going to make an episode dedicated to haunted Okinawa, because even with this one, there's like a handful of Okinawa stories that made their way into these 2 episodes right here. So it's really a very fascinating place because of just the history and the lore behind all that. But with that being said, this one is from M. Poo, 1994. Stationed in Okinawa on the base Camp Kinser, one of the Marines that was in my shop lived in room 101 or 102 in the barracks, and he would mention seeing a, quote, lady in black. It was a young Japanese woman dressed in a fancy dress that would just stare at him at night. Ooh, yeah. I ended up becoming roommates with him a few months later in that same room, and a few times when I slept facing the wall, I could just feel something standing behind me. But whenever I looked, I saw nothing. We ended up getting out of the room when a glass sitting on the medicine cabinet above the sink just mysteriously fell and shattered around it. Fast forward to the sink getting repaired and another Marine moves into that room. He also mentioned seeing that lady, and I would hear him screaming at night, "Who are you? What do you want?" Weird stuff. You know what's fascinating about a lot of these bases? Most of the stories are people being watched at night by these like weird pale-faced ghosts. And it's always in like the corner of a room, like up near the ceiling. Like we had one, I forget what episode it was on, but it was a while back. Same situation of like this weird white-faced ghost watching from the ceiling tiles and shit like that. And I did find one, I'm not sure if I put it in these because it wasn't paranormal, but it was actually, well, I won't ruin it just in case I did put it in here. But yeah, it was kind of fascinating. Most of these, especially out there, it was like all these bases and stuff, like these barracks all have very similar stories. And it's creepy and also kind of fascinating, but more creepy because when it's nighttime, you just want to sleep. And I'm sure, especially out there, you know,
it's popping.
It really do be like that. That does not sound fun, though.
Makes you wonder. Well, it makes me wonder, since I don't necessarily believe in ghosts.
Necessarily.
What the hell is going on? And I was watching a video recently where they talked about dream walking, which is kind of a Marvel thing that they put into one of their movies. But it somewhat makes sense that sometimes we visit ourselves in other dimensions or other, multiverses.
That's
in
what
our
people
dreams.
think some dreams are. Like that dreams are just us in a different
us.
Yeah.
That makes a little bit more sense in a lot of ways than ghost.
It also makes it terrifying, though.
Right. and it goes back to that one ghost story where the ghost and the person startled each other.
Yeah.
And then the ghost disappeared. And to me, you're not going to startle a ghost, but you might startle somebody that isn't expecting you to see them.
Yeah.
As they're watching you from a dark corner.
I know that's pretty spooky. Just the idea that can happen throws everything that everyone thinks that they believe like right out the window, especially about time and all that shit. Just makes you think, man. I don't know.
I mean, it doesn't make you think if you already believe time is a flat circle.
And here we are. We're back. Welcome back to year 1 of the podcast, folks. We did it.
Mommy.
I'm actually going to get into another Okinawa story by anonymous submission. That is the actual person's username. So it's called Screaming in the Woods of Northern Okinawa. I was stationed on a base in the northern part of Okinawa from 2015 to 2017. I work with ammunition and explosives, so I worked inside an area that stored all of that. This place was gated off, 250 or so acre area on the cliffside. Well, anyway, this place I worked at apparently had multiple mass grave sites from the World War II days. During my time there, an elderly Okinawan woman, along with a large group, came and toured through the area, and she pointed some spots for the sites. Pretty wild to think about. So my actual experience that scared the shit out of me, sometimes shit would happen that would require someone to go there during off hours. Because of my position at the time, it was always me. One night, an alarm goes off, and standard protocol is the MPs will come get one of us from our barracks, me, and we'll head in and reset it. The MPs are there to make sure it's not legit and to give you a ride since the area is fucking huge. We make our way to the front gate and get let in by the guards. After driving up for a few minutes, we make it to the alarm location. The area is pretty well lit by orangish lights on the front of the structure. The rest of the place is pitch fucking black. The only thing you can see is the next lit up structure down the road a ways. I walk up to the panel and reset this alarm that constantly gives us problems. No biggie. Same shit, different day. I head back to the car with the MPs, and we're just kind of standing there shooting the shit before we head back down. As we're getting the car, and I'm cramming myself into the backseat of this patrol car, I hear the loudest, blood-curdling scream ever. My blood pressure shot through the fucking roof, and we all were wide-eyed asking each other, what the fuck was that? One of the guys I was with said it must be a mongoose. Wow. Of all the things to say.
Ricky Ticky Tabby.
There you go. We found him. There was no fucking way. Then again, this eardrum-shattering scream. We nope the hell out into the car and start driving slowly away while the driver hit the tree line on the side of the road with his spotlight. Then again, the scream. It stopped quickly, but this time, while the light shined through the wooded area, we could hear branches and shit moving, like someone running towards us from within the jungle. We sped off down the road and to the front gate, told the guards about it, and they weren't even surprised. Said they hear crazy shit all the time. Sometimes they just see black figures way up the road just walking. That was my only experience, but I have some friends who have seen and heard wild shit up there too. There are tons of ghost stories for all the bases here. My favorite is the cigarette ghost, I believe on Camp Hansen, one of the gates during the middle of the night. A Marine or soldier dressed in dirty, used-up fatigues from the 1940s, sometimes covered in blood on some encounters, or old-style service uniforms, would walk up to the guard shack. He would ask the person standing guard for a light. He'd then walk away. As he got further away, only the cherry of his cigarette would be there. Wow.
I feel like I've heard that story before.
Yeah, there's definitely some similar... I've heard the screaming in the woods type shit where you can't really see anyone, but you're just like looking around for this. And granted, there are animals that make screaming sounds, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but exists. But hey, a lot of the stuff we talk about doesn't make a lot of sense, but exists. Am I right, Christian?
Also, Scott is always right.
Thank you. So...
Hey, no.
Yeah, Scott, clip that. Cut that out. Got him. Good job.
Cigarette Man.
I know, that'd be an interesting ghost to see. That one wouldn't be as terrifying, you know. I mean, you might be a little shook if someone walks up and you're like, are you from World War II, my friend? But all they do is ask you for a light, then just walk off, and you just see a little burning cherry.
Yeah.
Hey, isn't that neat?
And for those that don't know, Okinawa was major battleground during World War II.
Yeah, which would explain a great deal of the stories that come out of that place, you know.
Here's something else. U.S. troops in April of 1945 made an amphibious landing on Okinawa. So it was heavily defended by the Japanese, and it was a 3-month campaign that resulted in about 12,000 U.S. deaths. So you figure that's a good amount for one battle, stuff we don't hear about anymore.
People a month, roughly, yeah.
Right. And since basically the Japanese military that was there is defending the island, and you tend to lose a lot more people when you're defending, especially when you're defending an attacker with the weapons that the United States had at that point in the war. So there's a lot of death on that island during that time period of World War II.
And when we talk about stuff like stone tape theory and stuff like that, like traumatic stamps in time, pretty much, of these like crazy events and whatnot, like it's no surprise that you see all this shit or that people have so many stories from this. Because even if it's just a replaying of an event that happened, like there was a lot of trauma that took place on that land, you know?
It's like a stamp imprinted that lasts throughout time.
Exactly.
And it just stays there. And black figures just walking around.
Racist, but yeah.
Could be, well, I mean, it maybe not racist. If the U.S. was there in World War II, maybe they mean something else by black figures than just shadowed figures that I was thinking about.
Yeah. We're all thinking like, oh, weird shadows. Like, no, just black people. Oh, okay, cool.
No, yeah. What was it that they would say? And no, I'm not going to say it because it's Full Metal Jacket. And it's probably going to sound racist.
Well, yeah, I can just take any word you say and bleep it and make it sound like you said something really racist. And that's fine. And I do that sometimes. And that's cool. Yes, of course. Racism.
Nah, man.
That ain't me. What would you do in a situation where you're just standing around and you hear a wild scream coming from the woods?
I would think it was a mongoose.
Wow.
Or a loon.
Do mongoose make wild? Like, I've never heard a mongoose scream.
I have not either.
This isn't mongoose country, so it's not like it's a familiar thing. But yeah, when they said that at first, I'm like, a mongoose? The hell, man?
Maybe some of these animals end up in a natural type of amphitheater setting in the hills.
Just the acoustics.
Yeah. I mean, that's possible. That probably is what happens in some cases where people report hearing strange sounds, because that could happen naturally.
Sure.
But some strange sounds just don't make sense.
There's plenty of strange sounds that don't make sense.
And you would think soldiers spending time at these bases would become more familiar with the sounds that some of the animals make at night.
You would think that, yeah. Which is probably why this guy, when the one dude was like, maybe a mongoose, he's like, no, definitely not that. But who's to say? It's all speculation when we're just a couple of turds sitting on a couch in the middle of a garage in Alaska, you know?
Oh, one other thing.
What
kind of habit does cigarette smoking create if you're still needing a light in the afterlife?
Maybe he just wanted to look cool, man. You didn't think about that? Maybe he just thought he was a rad guy. Or he's like, the only way this cigarette cherry burning thing works is if I actually smoke. So
yeah,
there's a lot of pieces that need to fall into place.
Maybe it's just stress relief, and it's stressful being a ghost.
I can believe that.
Some things never change.
That's true. Anyway, this next one is called Fireball in the Desert, and it's by Unknown Database. I served in the United States Air Force from 01 to 06. We were doing warfare drills at my home base, and we were working 12-hour shifts for a month straight. I was on the night shift, and we basically tried doing our jobs while a team was, quote, attacking us. Even during these exercises, we had to support missions that weren't part of the exercise. We got a request to drop off a generator and a light cart out in the middle of nowhere in the desert. It was super late at night and was an odd request even in normal operations. I don't know why I even wrote the above, but nonetheless, an African American sergeant and a younger female airman are the ones to take the items requested. The trucks we tow with are like short pickups and aren't that fast, so it takes them about an hour to get to where they're going. When they got back about an hour and a half later, the African American sergeant was almost white in color. The female was absolutely freaked out. They said when they got out there, they both got out to unhook the equipment. They said a weird vibration and noise started from the distance, but it was getting closer fast. The sound alone unnerved them, but what happened next had them running scared. A ball of fire lifted up out of the ground about 30 feet from them. When it did, the sound became deafening. They jumped in the truck and went as fast as they could back to the shop. I knew both of these individuals very well before this incident, and the look on their faces and that night gave me 100% trust that what they saw was real. It traumatized them for a bit. Eventually, they just never talked about it again. That's my story anyway. That's kind of weird.
Let me add a new wrinkle to this story, because it's in a training setting. What if the U.S. government was doing things similarly or more similar, or like they did? I don't know how to even talk this morning. But if the U.S. military was doing things that they maybe did in the 50s and 60s where they
like weird experiments and shit like that
on the troops. And, I think something as simple as infrasound might create some hallucinations. And I would think that the military would have things, or they would have tools that they would do experiments with that could really produce hallucinations, maybe through sound or.
Yeah. Well, it's tricky.
So, and if they can't do it, maybe they've tried it before, and all of us are different. And some of these things might affect certain individuals different. But a fireball coming out of the desert floor is like Dogman and seemingly impossible. A little bit more possible than Dogman. But
yeah,
we lived out in the desert. That doesn't typically happen. If it does, it's hard to imagine that it's maybe real, but just something you experience on a different level or a different plane of existence than we normally do.
I don't know, man. It feels like there's a vast divide between what we believe as like normal citizens is possible or real and what the government and or military industrial complex is capable of, I guess. So we could think something's impossible that they've been working on for 20 years. And I'm like, well, no, it's not impossible because we have it. We just don't tell you guys about it.
I always think of the SR-71 Blackbird that Lockheed made, that they tested out at Area 51 for years. And I remember, I've always known about it because my dad worked at Lockheed. But it was pretty secret for many years.
Yeah.
When I was a kid and I'd tell people about it, they wouldn't know what it was if they weren't from the Antelope Valley.
Yeah.
Until years later when it became more public. But that thing had been flying since way before I was born. And this is still the plane that's officially holds like speed records.
Yeah.
Still. And we know there's something better out there now.
And that was from like the 50s or some shit, right? Like that was around
late 50s, early 60s is when they started flying it out of Area 51.
And that's what I'm saying, man. It's like it's hard for us to even say that something's impossible because I forget what it's called, but the fact that we haven't seen it, but there's people out there that are working on shit like this for years and years and years. And they're like, oh, that's possible. That's why, like, when you say hallucination or something through like infrasound, like I would understand that if they saw something, but it wasn't the exact same thing. The fact that both of them saw a weird fireball come out of the desert floor 30 feet, that's a pretty short distance away. Like for two people to have folie à deux or whatever at the exact same time, see the exact same thing, the exact same distance away. I don't know, man. Like I would lean more towards some weird, actually, like you said, experiment or something like that where they're almost setting these people up to be like, okay, they're going to go out there, they're going to see this thing, and we'll see what they say. We'll see what they report back. There are also stories of like UFO accounts and whatnot that are kind of fireball in nature, where it's like these glowing orbs flying across, and there's like the ones that go like deep down into the ocean or shoot out of the ocean into the sky. And a lot of those stories have a weird correlation with them where it's one orb and then at some point splits into, 3, 4, 5 orbs, do the same thing, combines back into one and then flies up. So there's a lot of weird shit out there that we still don't know what it is, but there's enough stories where I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's not an alien, but like you said with the SR-71, maybe it's something crazy they're developing that, is just the next wave of, spy technology or spy planes or honestly anything at this point. Who was it that just came out? Oh, I think it was Tucker Carlson on Rogan. Did you see that clip where he's talking about like these UFOs that he thinks they're supernatural and they're not, like extraterrestrial in nature?
Unfortunately, my feelings on Tucker Carlson.
Oh, we know your feelings on Tucker Carlson.
Would make it hard for me to take anything he says seriously because I feel like he's basically an entertainer. So I would trust a lot of other people before I would trust an entertainer trying to draw people to their show
that's most media folks though, in all honesty. Like
I agree, especially from successful channels or formerly from successful channels. But yeah, it's hard for me I've never been able to take him seriously just because I feel like the stuff he says sometimes so ridiculous. I'm like, okay, this is just for clicks.
I get that, but then there's also people like, like Russell Brand and shit like that, like people that are coming out now as almost like this counter to mainstream media and stuff. I love Russell Brand. I love pretty much all the topics because it's like, and maybe there's some spin in there, there's some bias, there's some like blah, blah, but for the most part, it's just people talking about shit that's going on. Like same with breaking points and stuff like that,
For the most part, Russell Brand is just, he's not a bullshitter. These are some of his views or his leanings.
Yeah.
I think he tries to be an honest person when he presents some of this material. I feel like my brain would not let me listen to Tucker Carlson. I don't.
Yeah.
He's just an untrustworthy narrator for me when he tells stories about whatever it is. And that's not a political statement.
It's just a personal, like your personal view on him.
Even before he became famous, back when I think he was on CNN or.
Yeah, he hopped around a bit, right?
Back then when Jon Stewart went on the show with him, like it was a liberal and a right, a conservative show. And Jon Stewart many years ago came on and ridiculed him and his co-host.
Yeah.
And even back then, it was
like a Hannity and Combs type situation or what?
Yeah, but it was prior to that.
Or was it a freaky deaky type situation? I mean,
it was definitely not that. It was all political.
There, yeah. I gotcha.
And also, I have purged my life of anything political leaning for the most part. Yeah, so it's really hard to bring somebody that spends so much time on that kind of stuff back in, even if it's on UFOs. But
I think it was just a personal, like, I didn't watch the interview yet. Like Rogan, I love the show, but long form, when you're a busy person, is hard to get into.
Yeah.
Like because I'm like, do I have 4 hours to sit here and listen to this guy? But I did see a clip of it. So I didn't really get the full gist, but I believe it was just a personal opinion of his that, like, there's these things out there that, could they be extraterrestrial? Sure. But for him, whatever reason, he leans more supernatural, that it's,
I think,
Earth-like entities and angels and demons and whatnot. And
I feel like that is a conservative view on aliens, which you do hear about. A lot of people believe they're evil.
Sure.
And those people, they have determined that the interpretation of maybe biblical statements lead them to have to say, UFOs or aliens or demons, which is fascinating to me because I don't think you can connect. Everything that's not a Christian isn't a demon. Or a Muslim.
Sounds
or
like
whatever.
something a demon would say, Christian. I don't know.
I mean, is my boyfriend a demon? Our demons are all inside of us. And every once in a while they slip out.
I'm going to go ahead and get off this before I feel someone out there thinking that we're taking this a political direction, which is something that we literally never do. We don't talk about political beliefs or anything like that. But if we're talking about someone that has a certain stance politically and you say something bad about them, people are automatically going to think that you're just assaulting them. My beliefs, damn it.
Let me be honest what my problem with him is. It's his tie.
It's his voice. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Yeah. So there you have it, folks. There you have it. With all that aside, what are your thoughts on UFOs? Do you think they're extraterrestrial? Do you think they're otherworldly?
They're drones.
Do you think they're demons?
Drones.
Huh, friend?
Most of them are drones.
Is my UFO a demon? Anyway, this next one is called Black Humanoid in the Bathroom. That's by a racist guy. No, I'm just kidding. It's Cat Marie 676.
Doesn't sound like a guy. Nah, man. Mommy.
Anyway, this is a passenger terminal in Yokota, opening for an early Space A flight at 3 a.m. with my supervisor and another airman. I get tasked to start turning on lights and the TVs that broadcast information around the terminal. I had just gotten to the inbound passenger side of the terminal, and it was still dark in there besides the backup lights. I had to walk across to the other side of the room to get to the breaker box to turn on the lights. I heard what sounded like heavy footsteps running up behind me. That's always the worst with ghost stories. I hate those ones. I hate those because I would literally shit myself if that happened. Like, oh God, what? And then just turn around back. Oh, they got me. You got me. You got me. I turned thinking it was either my supervisor or the other airman with us to let me know something important, and there was no one behind me. I turn the lights on from the breaker and make my way back to dispatch and find both my supervisor and the other airman talking about work. Another time, I was working nights at the terminal and was in the process of shutting down and locking up the building. We have to check the bathrooms to make sure no passengers are hiding. They try to hide in places so they will have a free place to sleep for the night. So I walk into the female bathroom. Oh yeah, just kidding. And I see, and I see this solid black humanoid shape in one of the stalls in the reflection of the mirror. I turn around to look at said stall and there's nothing there. I look back at the mirror and the black form is gone. I didn't stick around to check the rest of the stalls. Working nights, we all heard phantom footsteps, doors flying open, and just a general uneasiness of being at the terminal at night Wish we could explain the noises away, but we would all be in the same room, terminal locked up tight, and swear we heard someone running or walking down the halls. That is spooky. So no thank you for me on that. Anytime, have you ever heard like disembodied footsteps, I guess you could say?
Not really that I can think of. Nothing that left a mark.
Yeah.
Or that I didn't rationalize in some way.
Yeah. I mean, most people are like, oh, there's either a cat or there's a mouse in here. Or there's some kind of rodent in the walls, or like there's a lot of things that can make that sound. But there's also a very distinctive sound that boots make. You know what I mean? Like it's like kind of like, especially like steel toe boots and shit like that. Because I remember, I've talked about it a couple times, but in Vegas, that one of the last houses that I lived in before moving up here was, I was living with an ex at the time, and whenever we were in the garage, like smoking, we'd just be sitting there talking or whatever, and you just hear these footsteps above. And it was only us in the house. You'd just hear these heavy footsteps, and it was always in my fucking room, man. And she would always be like, oh, it's just my dead friend Jimmy. He's like, what the fuck? I'm like, why the hell is Jimmy going in my room with his heavy ass boots then? That's the question we got to be asking ourselves. But
because Jimmy didn't like you hanging out with this girl.
That's exactly what it was. I can almost guarantee it. I don't know, man. There's something uneasy about hearing footsteps when nothing is there. Especially when you're like, I'm about to go to bed in 20 minutes and I get to go hang out with Invisible Boot Man.
I'm more fascinated by him seeing this image in the mirror.
Doesn't that seem weird, though, at the same time? Like, why, for just a fleeting moment, why would you have the ability to see something?
I've seen things in the mirror, or thought I'll be in the bathroom getting ready and think I see something in a mirror, and I look, it's not there. But it's probably just my eyes, the way I glanced or could see something out of the corner of my eye, and it momentarily took the shape of something.
Missed opportunity to say it was just my imagination.
It was. Oh,
that's fine.
Yeah, I don't like old music.
I know you don't, and that's where you're wrong.
No.
That's where you're wrong.
It's like I walk into the store, go to work, and they have the same playlist on Spotify. Seems like every day I get there, and it's...
Is it classic oldies? Like 50s, like doo-wop, soda pop? No?
I work at a weed store.
That sounds like the perfect music to be playing in a weed store.
No, it's more classic rock, and I'm like...
Yeah. That's old.
I've heard this song so many times just with my aunt and uncle playing it.
Wow.
And I'm like, I don't want to hear it anymore.
I didn't know your aunt and uncle were rock stars, but that's cool.
Well, they didn't play it. They played it on their stereo.
Yes, of course, stereos.
They were big in those days.
You know what has a great playlist? Fallout.
Oh, that's the movie, the show.
Yeah.
I don't like that kind of music, but I like it. I like it in that way.
Yeah. See, and I figured you were going to say that. I'm like, it's all nothing but old school, like Nat King Cole classics and all that shit. But when I'm watching it, I'm like, man, these are the hits. Man, these are the hits.
My grandparents' music.
I know, but there's something wholesome about it. You know, like in the world we live in now, you can't turn on the radio without someone clapping cheeks or, you know.
I would disagree with you there. Some of those things that we think are wholesome, when you find out what they're really about, you're like, oh
sure. Yeah.
That's not quite so wholesome.
Are there some weird folks back in the day? Absolutely. Who's the one I'm thinking of?
They had to speak in code back then.
Yeah, there's one specific degenerate pervert that was very famous. I can't remember what his name was.
Jerry Lee Lewis?
It might be that, yeah. Yeah, he did some weird shit, but I mean like the vast majority, man, the vast majority were wholesome.
He just married kids that happened to be related to him.
That just happens sometimes, yeah, amongst other things, for sure.
Great balls of fire. He had to release what was in him.
Ew, gross.
That is totally gross.
Yeah, so... But beside the point, I'm not getting way off topic on this. Yeah, I guess for circling back around to entities you see for a split second, when you say you've seen things in the mirror, do you say, like, do you have an idea of what it is, or is it just like a shape?
Usually I turn around and it's like clothes.
Gotcha.
I'd be curious to see what our listeners say about seeing things in the mirrors. But there's this one time, like at my place, you know, because it gets cold in Alaska, so...
Does it?
Yeah, we have a couple robes hanging up on the refrigerator, so when we step outside to smoke.
Oh, I was like, on the refrigerator.
Yeah,
man.
they're just like to go outside and
you have smoking robes. Yes,
yeah.
Of course.
But when I turn off the TV and I'm sitting on the couch or chair, and there's like I think I have a light on in the kitchen, but like all the other lights are kind of off. That shadow of the robe freaks me out every single time.
Yeah,
because it's like a black figure standing behind me.
I know, yeah. And it doesn't even matter that you know it's there, that you've seen it 100 times every time it gets you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have the same thing with my son's bath towel that hangs on the back of his door. At night, if I'm in there, like laying next to him or whatever, and I turn over, there's just this like hovering ghost looking thing on the back. Like, oh God, oh, okay. It's just his teddy bear ears on this weird towel. It's fine.
Could you imagine, like, when I see things like that, or when things get me like that, it takes me back to being a kid and how things used to terrify me.
Yeah, I have different experiences with things terrifying me as a kid, but sure.
Mine were all in my head.
No.
That's fine. But I think I do have one final story to close this out on, and it's on brand with our Degenerate Pervert podcast show here. It's called It Watched Me in the Bathroom, and it's by INGR.
It's definitely a human in this case.
Oh, yeah.
Ghosts aren't that perverted.
Turns out they are, actually. Man, I've found so many, and what we need to do is for Strange Highness, or maybe not even Strange Highness, but TFT After Dark, is compile all the weird degenerate stories that we find. I have one that is probably not paranormal and is more true crime related, but TFT After Dark, I honestly don't give a shit. I'm just going to find the weirdest stuff I can find, compile it into these absolutely bonkers episodes, and maybe that's what we'll do for like YouTube memberships or something like that to start off. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of weird, even shit, the last story we told was in the bathroom. You know, I think ghosts are perverts, Christian. You're going to get along great when you're in the afterlife.
I'll have friends.
What's that?
I'll have friends.
There you go. That's all you need.
Friends that stand in bathrooms looking at rear ends.
Wow. This is by INGR, and this is another Japan stuff. Dude, I'm telling you, there's so many ghost stories that come out of Japan. I kind of want to visit now.
I definitely want to visit.
We should go do a live show for our one Japanese listener.
I definitely, if I ever go to Japan, I have to go to the gravesite of Jesus.
Okay.
You don't trust me? Look it up.
No.
I'm telling you.
No.
It's a thing. She's going to hell.
Anyway, was stationed in Japan and lived in the dorms. There's no gravesite of Jesus. Oh my God, it's fine.
According to this legend, there is. I'm telling you. Look it up.
Yes, of course. Our Christ ascended to the heavens, Christian.
No,
there's actual records.
It's a different. Okay. It's not for this show.
Of course not. No, nothing is ever for this show. We just take it
or
there.
Not for this episode.
Gotcha.
But look it up. It's a fascinating story. I'm pretty sure it's not true, but it's fascinating.
Well, of course it's not true. Melanie, say a prayer for our homie over here because he is.
Don't say a prayer for me.
He is lost.
Go online and Google it. Jesus in Japan, and tell me what you find out.
I can find Dracula and toast stories if I Google anything, man. Okay, so there's no, it's fine.
There's a whole little I don't know if it's a celebration or what, but it's like this town in Japan has this story, and it's an old story, and they celebrate the story, and they.
Well, I hope it's an old story if it's involving Jesus.
And they visit the grave and all that stuff. Just trust me. Trust me.
Sounds like some kind of tourist trap, if you ask me.
It might be like most of them. All that voodoo stuff in New Orleans.
Yes, tourists. Of course. Voodoo magic. Anyway, if I can cling on to the remaining listeners that we have after yet another weird disagreement, let's get into this. We're stationed in Japan and lived in the dorms. Nice dorms, even. So nice that I had a door to my bedroom and bathroom. Wow.
I guess that's not a normal door.
I guess that's nice, yeah. I too have bedroom and bathroom doors. However, I live a life of luxury, don't I? But I only slept in my bedroom a handful of times.
Oh, playa.
There you go. You see, I was on the toilet, chilling with the door open because I live alone, so why not? No, dude. Even when I'm alone, I lock the door when I take a shit. You know why?
Ghost.
I'm not going to be taken out while I'm taking a shit. No one's going to bust in, break down the door, and shoot me while I'm dropping the deuce, all right? It's not happening to your boy. It's not happening now. It's not happening ever.
The world you live in.
I feel like that was a joke, but maybe Hannibal Buress? I don't know, but it resonated with me to the point where I'm like, I too will take this on. Anyway, you see, I was on the toilet chilling with the door open because I live alone, so why not? Then I looked up and saw it. Something had ducked quickly into my bedroom, and I had no idea what. My brain couldn't process it, but clearly something went into my bedroom. When I left the bathroom, I carefully went to my bedroom and looked around. Nothing, of course. I slept in my living room on the recliner that night. Then, days later, it happened again. The same situation. Something was peeking at me from around the corner of the door and was in my bedroom. It was pale and had dark hair, a blur, strange and alien, but somewhat human. And thus, I never slept in my bedroom the entire 8 months I was in that dorm. I slept on my recliner every night. Because F that. Didn't tell anyone because I figured I was just seeing things and my brain was trying to fill in pieces.
Sometimes you push too hard.
Wow.
And you see things.
That's usually just stars in your periphery or something, but little sparkles.
I was talking to like marathon runners. What are you talking about?
Dropping a deuce.
Oh, okay.
Hemorrhoids. That's what happens with that. Careful with those, folks.
Yes.
Didn't think you were going to get hemorrhoid advice on the Spooky Ghost Show, did you? Well, you're welcome. You come here for the facts, all right? And it doesn't matter what those facts pertain to.
We aren't your typical spooky ghost pod. Rub my large head.
No.
Yes.
That is the proper response.
Yeah. No. Yeah, it's good stuff. I don't know, man. In Japan, there's a lot of ring-looking ghosts, I'm noticing. You know what I mean? Like, or The Grudge. I guess there's a reason that those are the entities in these movies, because that seems to be like a very common theme with ghost stories out there. It was like, well, she was pale and had long black hair in front of her face. She had a long white gown on, and it wasn't a good idea. I didn't like it.
Japan is very spooky.
It is, but also kind of neat. I think also kind of perverted. You know, there's a lot of weird stuff and cool stuff.
Anime is not that weird.
I'm not even talking about that, but also at the same time, I'm kind of talking about that.
I was wondering if you'd go with that.
Yeah. So, still on the bucket list of locations to visit, no doubt.
Oh, you want to go see No Doubt?
No, that is one of the things that is about as far away from my bucket list as it could possibly get.
Don't speak.
That's on my fuck it list, where it's like, fuck that, get it out of here.
Classic.
Even though I realize it could be taken for something else, and that's fine. You know, we're not here for that. Come at me, bro. What would you do if you see a ghost while you're dropping a deuce, Christian?
I would remember I left the door open and shut it.
You just waddle over to the door and be like,
I'd much rather do that than see a ghost peeking at me while I'm doing my business.
Yeah, that checks out. You know, does check out. Cool. Well, there you have it, folks. What would you do if a ghost is witnessing you in your intimate moments? Comment below if you're on YouTube and tell us your thoughts. You know, have you ever, are you a military vet? Have you been in situations that don't exactly make sense? Have you seen things that absolutely don't make sense? Comment them.
Yeah, have you seen fake Dogman?
Wow, have you seen real Dogmen that wet blankets all over the globe might perceive as being non-existent, but you know in your heart of hearts to be true? That's a very specific niche that I've put out there for people to fall into. So if that's you, comment.
If that's you, we have Bigfoot episodes you might be interested in.
Wow. And you know, we need to do another Dogman episode just so we can bring you around, Christian. You've convinced me. You've convinced me to convince you that Dogman is a real thing. I wish we would just keep calling it werewolves, though. This Dogman just doesn't sound cool at all.
I know. I don't understand why they went with Dogman when they already had a word for it.
Yeah, for the longest time, we've had a word for it. But then maybe people are like, well, werewolves doesn't sound real. You know, it does. Dogman.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, Dogman. That's beside the point. It's fine, honestly. I think that pretty much wraps it up for this episode. Remember to tune in next week when we have part 2, where we dive into even more creepy military haunted base episodes. And there's, like I said, it's just a mixed bag of military stories for the most part. But these are some fascinating stories, and some of my favorite ghost stories come from the military.
What if the military is responsible for Dogman? A medical experiment gone awry.
There's been several, I've heard several stories of, there's actually one, I think it was in either Georgia or Florida, somewhere in that neck of the woods, literally. There was someone driving along the highway, it was going like 65 or something like that, and they saw what they called the Dogman running next to their van, and then at some point running ahead of their van, and then dashing across the highway and disappearing into the woods on the other side. And what they said, they're like, this was about 40-ish mile, or maybe less than that, like 20-ish miles from a known location to do experiments on animals and people and whatnot. And so there's like some weird correlation with that. But I was like, creepy, but that would make more sense to me if there was some kind of weird hybrid or something. Actually, the thing that makes the most sense to me is Well, you already know, so I'm not going to get into that. If you don't know, then go listen to every other episode of this podcast. You'll find out. But that's for another day, of course. In the meantime, we'll see you right back here next week. Folks, comment wherever you're listening your thoughts. What was your favorite story? Do you have any theories of your own? You know, this is a collective podcast. We like to hear your opinions. It is not just Christian and I, because we do not have the answers. Only one of us does, and it's not Christian. But that's fine. Give us your thoughts. And if you want to talk to us, Christian and I are very active in the Facebook group and on our socials. So if you are looking to interact or suggest episode ideas or even share your own stories, you know, and talk with a group of pretty dope people, if you're into this subject matter and you're into the way that we do things here, then you are going to love the people that are in the Facebook group, because they are just the best of the best. And you can find that on our Facebook page at Freaky Deaky Pod. And we hope you join. It's a good time. In the meantime, we'll see you right back here next week for part 2. Goodbye.
Did he get away?
I think so. He knows how to open that door, so that's very funny that he